Cisco Certified Network Associate Day 35. Welcome back everyone. I'm Imran Rafi, your trainer for this entire series. Before we start today's class, let me apologize for my voice. I've been suffering from cold and my voice is in a terrible shape, but it's a promise that I want to start becoming more consistent with this recording. So I thought I didn't want to let this week pass without a video on YouTube. So welcome back everyone. Like I said, today we're going to look at dynamic trunking protocol and VTP. Before we go ahead, I request all of you to go hit on that subscribe button and on that bell icon. If you're coming in from your phone or if you're watching from your computer, just the same thing, subscribe button and that bell icon, so that you would be notified when we upload new videos. Like always, our social media contact is here. On the left, my company contacts, on the right, my personal contacts and my email address. So what are we going to look at today? Today we're going to look at, like I said from the last video, that for ICND2, which we started from the last video, I'm going to follow the Cisco ICND2 exam topics. So last time we looked at 1.1. This video we're going to look at 1.2, that is configure, verify and troubleshoot inter-switch connectivity, add and remove VLANs on a trunk, DTP and VTP version 1 and version 2. So these are the topics that we're going to go, so we're going to closely follow 1.2. First, we're going to look at dynamic trunking protocol. What is dynamic trunking protocol? All the switches, when you buy a new Cisco switch is configured. All the ports of the switch is configured in a mode called as dynamic auto mode. Now, what is dynamic auto mode? This is a Cisco proprietary trunking protocol, which lets Cisco when a port is connected with another port, another switch, these two ports are configured so that they can communicate with each other and form a trunk if necessary. But again, it all depends on the combination. So if you take a device out of the box and you take a wire, connect one switch and the other end to another switch, it will, like I said, both of them are going to be in dynamic auto mode. Hence, if you look at this table, this is a table that I created so that it becomes easy for you to know what will happen. So if both the ports are in dynamic auto, which is the default case, the switch will not form a trunk. It will still stay in the access mode function. So if you want the switch to negotiate a trunk, you need to make either one of those sides. Either you make it into a trunk, hard code the interface to be a trunk, or you can hard code that interface to be a dynamic desirable. This is another mode. So every switch port can be in 4 different modes. The switch port can be an access port, it can be a dynamic auto port, dynamic desirable, or the trunk port. So any of these 4 modes it can be in. So if at all both the sides are configured to be access, it obviously becomes access. If one side is access and the other side is dynamic auto, it becomes an access. If one side is access and the other side is trunk, that's something that you should not use. And again, if one side is access and the other side is dynamic desirable, it will be an access. So just these are 2 hard codes. So if you say access and trunk, these are hard coding either to be a trunk or an access port. So whenever it is hard coded either side, if it's hard coded to be a trunk, then it will always be a trunk. If it's hard coded to be an access, it will always be an access, except for these 2 cases where the other side is one side is configured to be a access port and the other side is configured to be a trunk. That is something that you should not use because it will give you unreliable results, right? Dynamic desirable and dynamic desirable, if you configure, obviously it's going to be a trunk, because what dynamic desirable means is, as soon as if you're on a dynamic desirable port, that port immediately when a wire is connected, it starts communicating and saying, okay, you know what, I can become a trunk. If it is a dynamic auto, the difference between dynamic auto and dynamic desirable is this: dynamic desirable will proactively start, and the minute you connect, it will start negotiating a trunk. But dynamic auto is a state where it waits for somebody else to start the negotiation. So if both of them are going to be in a dynamic auto, nobody is going to start the negotiation, and hence it will never form a trunk. But if both of them are in dynamic desirable, both of them will start negotiating a trunk, and obviously it will become a trunk. So this is the table that you need to know what will be the port. Will it be a trunk or an access port, depending on the configuration it is configured to. So let us quickly look at this concept from Packet Tracer. Alright, this is Packet Tracer. I have connected 3 switches and connected them in this form. So I'm going to put these 3 switch. I'm going to take the CLI for all the 3 switches, and I'm going to lay them in a row. Alright, so these are the 3 switches that is connected. So first let us go and let's go here and show interface trunk. Absolutely no interface trunk is formed, and that is expected behavior because, like I said, all the switches are configured with dynamic auto. So dynamic auto, if it's connected, it is not going to automatically negotiate a trunk. So show interfaces trunk will not have any trunk formed between the 3 switches. Just waiting for that to expire. We can look into it. Show interface F0/1 switch port, and it will tell you here that it is in dynamic auto. The administrative mode is in dynamic auto. That is the default. So again, this switch interface show interface F0/1 switch port. Again, it will tell you it's in a dynamic auto mode. Even this switch, show interfaces trunk, obviously there's no trunk. Show interface F0/1 switch port, this also is in dynamic auto, and that's expected behavior because by default, like I said, all the switches are going to be in dynamic auto mode. Now if you want the switch to be negotiator trunk, we need to make one of those ports, like from a table. If you know, if any of those ports, if I hard code it into a trunk, it will become a trunk, or if I make one of the ports into dynamic desirable, it will become a trunk. So let's go to switch 0, interface F0/1 switch port mode trunk. I can say switch mode trunk to hard code it into a trunk, or I can say switch port mode dynamic, and I can say desirable, right? Either it can be dynamic auto or dynamic desirable. At the moment it is set to auto. We're going to make it dynamic desirable. I hit this, and you can see the switch port went down, right? Up down state line interface changed to state down, then up down went to state up. That means it negotiated a trunk. So I can go here and say show interfaces trunk, and you can see that there is a trunk formed between these 2 switches. That's switch 0 and switch 1. Show interfaces trunk. And we can also see this mode is in desirable, this is in auto, and they have formed a trunk. So trunking is formed, and F0/1 is in trunking. Now F0/2 of this is connected to switch 2, but they have not formed trunk. So let's go make this interface, that is interface F0/1 switch port mode dynamic desirable, right? And again, same thing happens here. So this switch, the middle switch, should have 2 trunks. So we will say show interfaces trunk, and you can see there are 2 trunks. FA01 is a trunk, FA02 is also a trunk. The mode is auto, auto. That means, what are the cases that this, when this port of switch 1, if it is in auto, what are the cases that the other side would be in for this to become a trunk? One, it could be either in trunk hard coded, or it could be in dynamic desirable mode. These are the only 2 modes which will make this trunk, right? So that's something you need to deduce. That table, you know, you need to learn that table. So if you have the table, if you know that table, you will know by looking at these configurations what will be the configuration on the other side of the switch. So that is dynamic trunking protocol or DTP. Next we look at VLAN trunking protocol. Like we looked at this concept in I think day 14, so I'm not going to go in depth, but just to summarize, VTP is VLAN trunking protocol. It's a protocol by which VLAN databases get synced, right? So it's not a trunking protocol per se. Like I said, there are two trunking protocols. It's ISL, that's encapsulation protocols, trunk encapsulation protocol. Either it is ISL or 802.1q encapsulation, right? But VLAN trunking protocol is VLAN syncing protocol. It syncs the VLAN databases from one device to another device, right? So in this case, like I said, this switch 0. So if you want to explain VTP, switch 0, switch 1, and switch 2. Now VTPs can be in 3 mode. It can be in server mode, client mode, or transparent mode. In VTP 3, of course, there is another mode called off, but Cisco's exam topic specifically mentions that we're only going to look at VTP version 1, version 2, right? So server is where you make VTP configurations, where you create new VLANs, all those things you create in a server. A client, you can't make any you can't create or delete VLANs. It can only take database updates coming from a server and update its own server. And then transparent, like I said, is as good as being disabled, as good as being off, VTP off. But what it would do is it would relay. So if at all there is VTP updates coming from one of its interfaces, it would take that update and send it out across on another interface, another trunk, right? So it would participate in relaying that information, but it will not update its own VLAN database. Like I said, watch day 14. I've pretty much explained everything in day 14. What we're going to do is maybe show you the configurations again. So these are the configurations. So if you want to change the VTP version numbers, it is VTP, go to the global configuration, VTP version. If you want to change the mode, VTP mode, and then you can choose server, client, or transparent. If you want to create a VTP domain, that's VTP domain and put a domain name. And if you want to create a password, it is VTP password and then put a password. Right, so if you want to look at it from the same example from Packet Tracer, 3 routers spread out, and we'll see how VTP works. Right, so at the moment, let's look at the VTP statuses. So show VTP status. You'll see that VTP version 2 is running, configuration revision is 0. By default, there are 5 VLANs, so that's what is here. And VTP pruning mode, and like I said, pretty much everything is standard, everything that we spoke about in day 14. So if you have not watched day 14, I would suggest go to day 14, watch that, and come back here. Let's look at the VLAN database. Show VLAN brief. That's how you look at the VLAN database. We see that there's VLAN 1, VLAN 1002, 1003, and 1005, right? Like I said, these are unsupported, right? Unsupported VLANs, and these are the this one default VLAN which all the ports are part of, right? The same across all the 3 devices. Show VLAN brief, show VLAN brief, right? So all the 3 devices have the exact same thing. Again, another thing that I want to tell, I think I missed that point in day 14. VLAN VTP, what it does, it syncs the VLAN databases only. It does not, let's say in your in this switch 0, let's say I have few ports configured with like switch port access, switch port mode access, and switch port access VLAN 10, VLAN 20, VLAN 30, whatever. That configuration of ports will not get replicated by VTP. VTP will only update the VLAN database, right? So if switch port 2, if switch 1 has VLAN 20 configured in one of its ports, but if the VLAN database does not have VLAN 20, that port will be shut down. It will not work. So VLAN database is a way where, VTP is a way where the VLAN database gets updated. and when this switch, even if let's say that port has VLAN 20 configured, and the minute this VLAN database gets a VLAN 20, that's when that switch will start, actually that port will start working, right? So VLAN database is what gets updated by VTP. So at the moment, show VTP status, at the moment all these three devices are in a server mode, right? Show VTP status, right? All of them are in server mode. You will see that here, server, server, and server. What we'll do is we'll make the middle switch, right, switch 1 into transparent. So let's say configure terminal VTP mode transparent, and we'll make the third switch, that's switch 2, into VTP client, configure terminal VTP mode client, right? So switch 0 is where we would create all the VLANs. So first let's go create a domain, configure VTP domain nwking.org, right? Changing the VTP domain. I think it will get updated here. Let's quickly have a look. Show VTP status. It's in transparent mode, so it's not updating itself. Let's see if this is updating this. Show VTP status. This has updated. So transparent has worked. It has taken that update coming from switch 0 and it has given to switch 2. Now when this did not have a domain name, so it created a domain name, because when it is in null state, if it gets an update with a domain, it just takes that and updates itself with a new domain. But if I make a change to this domain again, NetworKing, it will not make that change, right? So it will not make that change now. It will only make the change first time if it's in default. So if I want to make that change, I need to go here now and I need to make that change. So now whatever updates that I let's say I'll create a VLAN 100 here, and I say name Imran, show VLAN. There is that 100 VLAN here, but that will not get updated here. Show VLAN, because these are in different domains now, right? So just remember, if at all it is in null domain, if at all a new update comes in with the domain configured, the device with the null domain will actually update itself to that domain and become part of the domain. But once that domain is configured, if at all there's a new update coming from a different domain, it will not do that, right? That's the whole purpose of having domains. So let's go here, configure VTP mode server and VTP domain NetworKing. Oh, was that how it was? NetworKing. Okay, let me just, it is case sensitive, so I need to be very careful. It's NetworKing, right? Right. So now again, let's do VTP mode client, and let's see what happens now. So now, does this get updated? Show VTP status. Okay, it says VTP configuration revision is 2. Let's say show VTP status, config revision is 2, and it is. So that means it has taken an update. So let's say show VLAN brief, and you can see that the 100 VLAN has come, and like I said, there's absolutely no changes that's happened here, because this device is in transparent mode, and it would relay the information of VTP updates, but it will not apply it to itself, right? So that's what VTP transparent is. Another thing is, if you want to protect yourself, you can create a VTP password, but if you do VTP password, you have to make sure the other side the other device also should have the exact same password, and only then they will start updating, they will start accepting updates on VTP. Next we're going to look at is VTP pruning, What is VTP pruning? Again, some of the devices, let's say if you're enabling VTP, VTP is going to, let's say if you have 100 VLANs on your server, VTP server, and VTP server, if VTP is running, it will update that onto all the devices on the network. You might have 100 devices, and not all of these 100 devices would have all the VLANs, right? So what happens when VTP is configured? Like I said, if all the database of all the devices are updated with the new VLAN information, if there is any traffic for that particular VLAN, that traffic would be sent to all the switches, irrespective of whether there is a physical port with that VLAN or not. And that is a bad practice, because unnecessarily the bandwidth between those devices are being used, even when there's no host that has to receive that traffic, right? So that is where we need a concept called VTP pruning. VTP pruning is where we put that command called VTP pruning, and the switches would start automatically communicating with each other, telling if there is a VLAN in that particular switch. So if switch 2 does not have any VLAN 10 ports, there's no need for switch 1 to send VLAN 10 traffic. So let's say switch 1 has VLAN 10, so it needs VLAN 10 traffic, but it need not send the VLAN 10 traffic to switch 2 if switch 2 does not have any clients on VLAN 10. So switch 2 will tell, if VTP pruning is enabled, switch 2 will tell switch 1, please do not send me VLAN 10 traffic because I don't have VLAN 10 connected to me or any of the ports configured in VLAN 10. So that's what VTP pruning is. That's one way of doing. Another way of doing is by making use of something called as a VLAN trunk allowed command in the switch port. But the problem with trunk allowed command is it's a manual way of doing it. So you're going to tell each of those trunks what are the VLANs that is allowed in it, and what are the VLANs that's not allowed. So you can choose one of the, depending on your situation, you can choose VTP pruning. For VTP pruning, obviously VTP need to be enabled. In today's world, a lot of organizations don't like VTP because of the dangers that it has, and a lot of other reasons. They don't want VTP, they manually do it. So if your organization is not doing VTP, then you can't obviously use this. You will have to make use of the hard-coded method, where you say, go to each of those trunks and say switch port trunk allow VLAN, and tell the VLANs that's allowed and what is not allowed. Since VTP pruning command is not available on a packet tracer, I'm going to show it on GNS3. So if you come into a switch and type, if you go to Google Global Configuration and say switch port, say VTP pruning, if you hit enter, it will say pruning switched on. That's all. You just have to give that one command which says VTP pruning, and if you go into show VTP status, you will see VTP pruning mode is enabled, right? So that's how you enable VTP pruning mode. And if this is a, obviously you make that configuration in the server. So you go to the server and say VTP pruning enabled, and automatically VTP, when the VLAN database is updated by VTP would update that to all the connected devices. That means all the connected device VTP pruning would be enabled, and automatically those switches would start communicating with each other to minimize the traffic that is traversed or traveled through those trunk links. That's how you do using VTP pruning. But in case you don't want to do VTP pruning, you need to go into that interface. Let's say interface E0/0, and then you need to go switch port trunk allowed VLAN, and then you can say what you want. So you can say, if you say VLAN 10, then VLAN 10 will add it to that database. But if, let's say, you have added 10, you want to add one more, you say add, and then you put another number 20, then it will become 10 and 20. That's allowed. If you want to add more, you let's say I do before this I'll show you something else. So do show interface trunk, right? There is this trunk, and it says at the moment VLAN 10 is allowed. That's because I made a change earlier, but by default all the VLANs are allowed, right? All the VLANs are allowed on trunk. Like now there is 10 on that. If you want to add one more, I would say switch port trunk allowed VLAN, and I would say add 20 and do show interface trunk. You would see that now allowed VLAN is 10 and 20, right? So any other traffic would not go through that trunk, right? On the trunk they would say allow VLAN is only 10 and 20. That means you cannot send traffic for any other VLAN. So that's how you do the manual way, right? So depending on what you need, you can choose VTP pruning or VTP trunk allowed command. Today's offer code is day 35-90OFF. So you can use this offer code, right, coupon code, on our website to download anything with 90% off. So if you want to, if you always thought of buying our presentations for ICND1, this is about the time, because you're getting 90% off. If you want to buy the labs, I have few labs online. We will be having more soon, but one of those labs that is available there, if you want to buy, you get a 90% discount. So make use of this. This is only for one day. So on 12th of November midnight GMT, this would stop working, right? So go ahead and make use of it when it is available. And that's that. And thank you so much for watching today's video. I apologize for my voice once again. I'm really not well, but I had to do this for you guys, right? So thank you so much. We'll be back next week with another video continuing this ICND 2 series, and hopefully we continue and finish this series very soon. Thank you, and to see you all soon. Bye bye.